So bone classification is one thing, but bone physiology is another. And so this becomes kind of a big chapter when we take a look at all the parts. So I wanted to split this up into two different components. And this second component is all about joints and joint classifications. So let's take a look at the overall view, and what makes things about joints a little bit more challenging is there's two different ways to describe joints. Okay, we have a structural way that includes three different classes. So we have fibrous, cartilaginous, and synovial, and then we have a functional way. Okay, so the structural is by far the most complex, and it talks about how I always approach it is taking a look and saying, what are we visibly seeing when bone meets bone? That's what we refer to when we're talking about a structural classification of joints. Okay, so let's walk through a little bit of those. What I'm physically seeing when bone meets bone, or when this joint is there, is bone directly contacting bone and is joined together by fibers. Okay, so this is a fibrous type of joint, and we refer to that as a suture. Okay, now suture means that it's going to be fused to it, so it's not going to be movable after that. Okay, the second type, when bone meets bone, is that it's connected by some kind of fiber, but it's a tooth. Okay, so the first one we're taking a look at is sutures. Is going to be like skull is a classic example. Maybe some of the ilium, ischium, and pubis for the pelvis itself, or the os coxa. Those are sutured together. Another way is specifically dealing with the tooth, and what we refer to as a gomphosis. Okay, so we all remember when we were losing our teeth, we got us wiggling to a certain point where there's just a little thread that was holding in there. You can actually pop that little thread, and all of a sudden your tooth could come out. Well, that's the periodontal ligament. Kind of a nice little nod to Finding Nemo fans. But it's that little ligament in there that holds the tooth right into the mandible or maxilla. So that's referred to as a gomphosis. Okay, so we see bone on bone. It's either sutured, or we see it's a tooth that's a gomphosis there. And if it's neither one of those two, then we refer to it as a syndesmosis. Okay, that's how you want to approach this one, is kind of process of elimination. See, here's your tibia and your fibula right down by your ankle, and I'm not looking at the ankle itself, tibia to the ankle or tarsals, or the fibula to the tarsals. I'm looking at what keeps those two together right here. Okay, so there are fibers that tie these together so that the bones don't split apart as you jump. Well, since I see bone on bone and it's just fibers connecting it, it's not going to be sutured there because it's got to be movable, and it's not a tooth, obviously. It must be a syndesmosis. That's how you want to approach it. Now, another thing that we can see is that we have bone meeting bone, that's a joint, and so we see cartilage there. Okay, so we refer to that as cartilaginous synchondrosis. Okay, synchondrosis is referring to that yellow cartilage that you typically find on a rib going to the sternum on a skeleton. Okay, you always see that cartilage right here on the sides, and so that's that yellow cartilage that's there. That's the cartilaginous synchondrosis. The other type of cartilaginous joint is a symphysis. Okay, here's classically called the pubic symphysis. It's between the two pubic bones. But if you look on a skeleton in a classroom, you find that cartilage is not yellow, it's blue. And that's because it's a different type of cartilage. It's a symphysis cartilage instead. Okay, so this is the cartilage also here. When you hear about somebody slipping a disc in their back, that's that symphysis joint between the two vertebrae. Okay, that's also that cartilaginous. And so if you think about it, we've got different types of hyaline cartilage versus the list the name of it, but off the top of my head, but it's not the hyaline cartilage, it's the fibrocartilage that we find of the symphysis. Okay, so it's different there. Now, the third category is the synovial joint. Okay, synovial joint is kind of a sprainable joint. And so I think about it in terms of that because synovial just means fluid filled. Okay, a fluid filled joint is really tough to tell on a skeleton because the skeleton isn't wet. It doesn't have that capsule anymore. So think about it this: when I see a joint where bone meets bone, is that a joint that you could sprain? Okay, so certainly your fingers, your wrist, your knee, you sprain, and so on. Because it has this fluid filled joint, we have what's called a bursa sac. And so that sac actually allows for friction in there to happen, and you get fluids build up to reduce that friction. Okay, so that's a synovial joint. And so we classify those lots of different ways. I'm going to just classify them because we could break down the individual joints with this. We're just going to break it down in terms of, does it move on one axis, two axes, or multiple axes? Okay, uniaxial is like your elbow. You can only bring it one direction. You can't move it side to side. Okay, if I start to do this, that's my shoulder moving, not my elbow. So I can do it that way. If I take a look at my finger and bend it, I can only bend it like this. I can't actually bend it side to side. Now, your carpals and your tarsals, I know I can do this, but actually each individual bone in there only moves on one axis, okay? Those are all uniaxial. The multi-axial moves on many different axes, X, Y, and Z axis. That's going to be a ball and socket joint, just like your shoulders, just like your hips, okay? I know I can do this and I can do this, but that is only one axis for one particular joint. And so being able to do all those types of movements is actually different joints altogether that's moving. We have only one biaxial joint in our body that's right at the base of our thumb. It allows our thumb to go like this as well as like this. Okay, it's a saddle joint that goes in, and that's our only biaxial. We don't have that in our feet. The other primates do have opposable toes as well as opposable thumbs. So that's just what that is a result of a biaxial. Synovial meaning fluid filled, biaxial joint. Okay, so classify based off of that. Now, another thing that you can do when looking at joints is classify functionally. So here's where you want to be very careful. Don't overlap the two. Functionally, only looking for one description. And I always think, keep it easy, think sad. Just think about how well does it move. A lot, a little, or none. And that's going to be your key to getting it all through. We're not describing what am I seeing. That's structural. I'm saying how well does it move. That's functional. So if it moves not at all, that's a synarthrosis. That'd be an example, like your sutures and so on. If it moves a little bit, like your teeth, you can wiggle them a little bit because, orthodontists and things like that. Or when I take a look at my radius and my ulna, they're tied together. They will move a little bit, but it's not freely movable. My ribs, they're connected by cartilage. You got to push on them a little bit. And that's what I mean by somewhat moving. You got to push on it a little bit, and that will give to movement. That's an amphiarthritic joint. The last example are freely moving. Things about you just think about and you can just wiggle it. And so diarthrosis is going to be a freely movable joint. Be careful when you're thinking about things like your vertebral column. I know I can bend my back really easy and do all those things, but each individual joint only moves somewhat. It's actually the sum of all the joints moving together that gets that locomotion. So be careful. It can be a little bit deceptive. So take a look at those types of things. Some disorders, obviously, is when we get a sprain. We get those ligaments that get torn or stretched, and so that's going to cause them pain there. The problem with other joint disorders, remember that articular cartilage on the bones? Well, that cartilage can get torn. It can get broken. It can get damaged, and that cartilage just doesn't repair itself. So certainly joint disorder, I would consider cartilage damage within that joint is an extreme issue, and the cartilage won't repair itself. We can dislocate a joint, and that just means that it's no longer associated in the right spot. It's not going to move right, and that can cause some damage. It could actually, you treat a dislocated joint just like a bone break. You go in, have the doctors actually set that back into place. If it pops back in on its own, you still get it checked out, because as it pops back in, it could easily trap in nerves and blood vessels and ligaments and tendons, and all those things could get trapped in there and pinched off, and that could be actually pretty serious. So we have bursitis. Okay, remember that bursa sac on the synovial joints, we take a look, that can actually get inflamed and bringing a lot more fluids into that area from banging on it perpetually or whatever. It could be just some kind of inflammation there of that bursa sac bringing in those types of fluids. We have to have that drained. We have tendinitis, overusing a muscle. Now tendons actually have muscle pulling the bones themselves. So a tendon is different than a ligament. Ligament is bone to bone. This is tendon, a muscle to bone is a tendon. And so overusing that muscle or working it in a way, it just causes the swelling of the tendon itself. So you got to reduce that type of motion with that. And we have arthritis. Now be careful, because here, if you're talking about joint disorders, arthritis is just a generic term. It just means an inflammation of the joints. Arthritis happens in three different ways. Actually, a lot of different ways. We have three of them that we're going to know. Osteoarthritis is the typical one, where it's just kind of overused bones. They just kind of get worn. That's osteoarthritis. There's one where your immune system is attacking the cartilage. For some reason, women are 3 times more likely than men. That's rheumatoid arthritis. And the last one we're going to talk about, again, women are more likely than men to get this, is called Gouty arthritis. and that's where uric acid builds up. It's supposed to be excreted from the kidneys. For some reason, it doesn't work. And so those crystals build up in the actual joints. So osteoarthritis, we can see, typically just an older person's hands or whatever, just repetitive use. We see that just gets really overworn and kind of worn out that way, and that's osteoarthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis looks vastly different because it's the cartilage within the joints that's being attacked by the immune system. So here we're talking immunosuppressors and so on, extremely painful conditions. And it doesn't happen just in elderly people. Younger people get this all the time too. So it's an immune system response. The last one is going to be extremely painful. Crystal builds up within those fluid-filled joints and everything. That's uric acid. So you got to get the kidneys to work better to filter out that uric acid, and it kind of comes back, and you battle it a lot with those types of gouty arthritis. Okay, so taking a look at this chapter, we've got a bunch of different things going on. It's a pretty lengthy chapter. We have the compact bone being able to go through the osteon structures, draw them out, label them certainly, tell me what each one does, and then on the test I'm also going to be talking about individual things, and you tell me which one's being described. I'm going to show you some bone breaks, and you're going to be classifying that's in an x-ray, but I'm also going to be describing the bone breaks. And so based on the description, how would you classify it? Okay, taking a look at, and I lost that, sorry about that. Taking a look at the joint classifications, what we just went through. I'm going to be describing that a little bit, and I'll be describing a structural, or I'll be describing a functional. So watch out for that. Give the appropriate classification based off of that. We have bone growth, and that's going to be either through the cartilage or through the membrane. Here I have the one where you have the actual, you draw out the diagram of the osteon and label the parts. Up here, just to reemphasize, I'm going to describe some stuff. You tell me what I'm describing. We're going to be seeing that diagram of the long bone. You have to actually label up the parts. You know the diagram. You just label up the parts. We're taking a look at the different bone and joint disorders. There are two different ones. So make sure you're not taking like osteoarthritis and putting it into the bone disorder category when we're talking about that. So talk about those in terms of cause, symptoms, and treatments whenever possible. Sometimes it's just there is no treatment or whatever. Sometimes we don't know what it's caused by. It's just one of those things. Be able to talk about those. The lab practical portion, you're going to see some stations where you have an X-ray, and you got to classify based on what you see. I'm going to have different stations set up with the skeletons and different joints. You're going to have to give me the joint classification. Sometimes I'm going to ask you on a station, is that give me the structural classification of this joint. Another station might say the functional. So be careful. Know the difference between those two. Don't mix and match. Okay, you've got to be careful. And then we have other bone structures that we had from the previous chapter. Things from our checklist is taking a look at the protuberances, tuberosities, and so on. So make sure we can see some of those parts of fossa versus just any of those processes and depressions that we see from there. So there's 3 separate components for lab practical, as well as some writing components, and that should get you ready for this test.